So here I am playing Struggle of Empires. Briefly, I'm trying to play it a little quicker, less on camera thinking. The French took their turn. They picked up improved agriculture. And instead of using either of their abilities, they triggered an attack here in South America and knocked the Spanish out of there. Had to spend a couple bucks, but they had +1, +2, +3 for the naval support. And we're able to capture that fairly easily, giving them an edge over there. Alright, on to the next power, who will be the Spanish. Okay, in the Spanish turn, they picked themselves up a navy, which cost them a population, dropping them down, put it in the Mediterranean. Made an attack on the Austrians. They can do this because they're at war. In the Ottoman Empire. They had an extra bonus here. Actually, they had a total of +3. One for the unit that they have. Austria has none. And of course they had to pay cash for that, for the attack. One for naval support. There's no one else in the Mediterranean. And one for the Ottoman Empire throwing its weight into the battle. That gave them a +3, but they only rolled a 7, which is a 10, versus an Austrian 11. So they lose a strength point. They have to take the loss on the army. That gives them an unrest counter, which they can kind of hide so that no one knows how bad off they are in terms of unrest. And that's the end of their action, putting it on the Austrians. So Austria got kind of a pass here. They didn't lose territory to the Spaniards there, but there's still Russians who can afflict themselves on them. Austria played some catch-up. They bought themselves an improved agriculture chit. That's going to allow them to increase their population. Overall, that lets them do things as they see it later in the game. Right now they're playing a defensive game. So they had this position here. This one they're willing to surrender. And over here they built another fortification and made the pass to get it across. They have the boat to get it there. They're kind of ignoring Africa. They may lose that because of it, but they got their quick bonus off that. And they're basically just trying not to lose much at this point, I think. They may look to see, can they get some kind of little edge somewhere. But by fortifying the Caribbean, they're making it much harder to attack. And then they can make some kind of movement in order to get into a different position that maybe allows them to make some attacks. They've got a lot of navies. Okay, and the Dutch went next. They bought themselves army training, which cost them $6. Drained them of money, but then they paid $2 for an attack, taking an unrest for that. And took a Prussian piece out. They're at war with Prussia, so that's allowable. Speaking of which, now we're on Prussia. If you can remember, Prussia on the previous turn set themselves up for India. They used their mercenaries and also built an army, dropping their population down, and invaded India. 2 units went over perfectly fine. They attacked, and unfortunately they rolled really crappy. The Indians didn't roll too well either, but it ended up a tie. The Prussians lost an army. They got an unrest token for that. And they're not too happy with the turn that they just had. That puts us over to the Brits next. Well, it's hard to make some of these decisions. For the Brits, they also picked up army training and then paid for an attack, and that puts them actually at 2 unrest. They made the attack in Central Europe against the Prussians, and speaking of which, they destroyed a Prussian army. Prussia's unrest goes up for that. But the question is, why did they do it? Prussia's not doing terribly well. They had the odds at +2 on the die roll. Of course, there's a risk there. They had to pay money and take unrest to do it, just to knock Prussia down further. Kind of questionable, but it was an opportunity in the sense that that's where their armies had the strength to make an attack. Otherwise, they would have had to make a move, maybe to try to take this piece, which would be much, much harder, or to knock the Prussians out of there and actually make a move that makes a serious difference. Because this one, all it did was take 4 points away from Prussia, points that Spain's going to get anyway. So it's really kind of difficult to judge why it's worth it, but on the other hand, what do you want to do with those points? You could build another army. That would have been a possible value. But Anyway, the choice was made, the dice were rolled, and that's where we went. And for the Russian turn, they spent a population point to build a fortification in the Caribbean. It made it there successfully. They also built an army training chit. Those chits are running low. There's only 3 of them left. A number of people have them already. They're a +1 in combat. They're very, very valuable. I'm seeing them as probably more valuable, perhaps, than the actual buying additional armies. Even if even better than, say, the mercenaries that give you 3 armies over the game. This gives you an extra army in a lot of in every battle you fight, basically. So, to me, that seems more valuable than the once for war type things. And I'm beginning to assess the advice that was given in the game. So that's the end of this, the second round of the war, and we go to the third round. And the players pop back into their positions, and we'll go again. Okay, so the French take their third round movement, or action. They did a few things. They triggered off a couple of their freebies. The improved agriculture, they took an extra population for that, mainly to remind them to build something at some point. Press gangs, they fired off a navy and sent it up to North America, and it sunk on the way. And they said, that's a shame. They picked up the banking chit, which is a free chit, and that allowed them to buy an attack with an unrest. They got 3 gold instead of 2 for that, so they got an extra gold out of it that'll allow them another attack. Then they made an attack here in South America, and unfortunately for them, they rolled very poorly. They're at +2 against the Russians, who they're at war with. They rolled a 7, Russia rolled an 11. France loses an army. They pick up another unrest for that. This is sort of the danger. And, the Russian is still there. What is the other effect of this? Well, I don't know. I can't think of anything else too extreme about this. It's just, it sucks when you can't get the things you want done to be done. Now, they were already in the lead here. That's one of the reasons you don't take those risks. But it seems to me that knocking some of your competitors down, even if it may not be a great advantage for yourself, you don't have a lot of actions to spend. So you take what you have an opportunity to do, and if it drives somebody else down, that's just a help for you, because otherwise Russia gets 3 for this. But now we see the Dutch have an improvement over them, over the French, and they can perhaps start chipping away at the French losses. Could the Dutch have helped defend South America? That's a good question. They wouldn't have. They see no reason to unless Russia maybe paid them. But it appears that they could. The ally can also specify a fort can never be used to help an ally, only the active player. Yeah, so the Russian could have received help from the Dutch, but there's no real reason to help your allies in this unless they're offering you something. And the Russians didn't have anything to offer, so that's about where we are. Well, Spain liked that banking chit that France picked up so much, they picked one up for themselves, and they didn't get an attack in, so they didn't get to use their Ottomans this time, but they did spend another population and built another unit sending it to the Mediterranean. They're trying to build up enough force. They're allied with Russia, so they can't do much against them. Prussia's got a fortress. They might, but they also have these Mediterranean counters here of neutral states that they can try to take out. Right now, they have no presence there. They would like to get at least one so that they can get the big 6 points there. Austria is taking a new route here. They picked up the sugar plantations. They can fire this off once to give them one gold per token that they have in the Caribbean. And they're looking at, well, what if I expand my power there? So what they're going to do is they're going to put, they built another military spending this. Now they've got that extra population with the improved agriculture, and they successfully implanted those troops into the Caribbean, planning on trying to expand their power base there, because that's going to be worth cash for them, and money seems valuable. Maybe not tremendously so, but again, the more times you get to fire one of these things off, the more bonuses you get. It doesn't really matter which one it is. If it has one of those black triangles, you do get to use it more than one time, or you get to use it once per war. So again, buying them early seems of more value. That's really the truth with all of them, though. Like army training, well, you get that on every die roll you make, every attack you make. So, you know, the earlier you buy these things, the more valuable they tend to be. The Dutch go and take the war to the French in South America. This turn they bought themselves gauchos for $1. That already is putting them into debt. And then they paid for an attack for 2 more, so they've collected up a bit of debt here in terms of unrest. But then they managed a successful attack, killed the French army unit that was here, which cost France a point of unrest, of course, and managed to take one of the tokens. So they're making themselves in a position where maybe they can grab the gold mines. Actually, instead of the gauchos, who aren't as useful, they will buy Portugal, with South America, India, and the East Indies. Same price, better bonus, right? Okay. Prussia spent their turn buying the militia chip. That cost $4 for that. They got the ability to build 2 armies with 1 action. Of course, they have to pay the population in both cases, but then they sent them both successfully into India, and they're looking to establish themselves there. They don't really see much value in some of these other places, but in India, they seem to have a private playground. And I think that's kind of important. Once you can establish yourself as the owner of a territory, then it becomes valuable to get the, well, it becomes valuable ahead of time to grab the reinforcement options. So picking up the Nawabs, perhaps that would have been a better move. And then, you know, getting something like the East India Company or something as a bonus. The English are working to extend their military influence in the land areas. Yes, specifically in Germany here. They bought themselves an army, but they also picked up the Bavarian allied chip. They're trying to make themselves the power in the German states. They've already largely gotten themselves in Central Europe. Spain is their ally, so they can't do much about them right now. And that's okay, they're getting the majority of the points. And Russia finishes things off. They actually didn't buy a chit or take a chit this turn. Instead, they built an army, getting into Africa, and made an attack and took the Austrians out. I like taking chits, but most of the chits weren't permanent. They could have picked up navigation. They could have picked up one of these to target someone. But they really wanted to make sure they got Africa. And they may want to take something else next turn, etc. So maybe they let an opportunity pass by not taking a chit this time. But it didn't seem terribly valuable. They did have to pay unrest for the attack, however. So that kind of hurt them. Now we're going to move to round 4 and everybody comes back. I'm going to load this one up because this is about the length that I like these vids to be if possible. Alright, well, we'll be back for the last couple rounds.